Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak at the Destination Earth User Exchange Forum, and let me thank you for that, because at DestinE we believe that this is a crucial activity. You will hear the perspective from a potential user and indirect user of your services and services of the like. And why this is the case, I'm trying to explain to you in a very few slides. My name is Andreas, and I work for the unit of DestinE, which is actually providing evidence, quantitative evidence, that is used for policy proposals. So that's why we are called the Chief Economist Unit. If any proposal in the domain of energy legislation is made, and that proposal in the justification for that includes any quantitative elements, then it is the unit I work for that is looking after that. And in that unit, we use a lot of tools like modeling. I'm going to give you just a flavor of why we believe that your services is relevant by having a very quick review of what actually happened last year and what keeps us busy, and what is also the reason that unfortunately I am not in Rome but here in Brussels today. I would very much have liked to come to your place, to be honest, because I believe that direct contact is really beneficial. So we are just leaving a year of an extreme development in the realm of energy markets and the energy system in general. And what you see here is the roller coaster ride of prices for all relevant energy commodities between the years 2021 and roughly today. And you see the development of an energy market that was leaving the post-corona period with partially very low consumption of some, and particularly fossil fuel for aviation, for instance, but then was entering a period of extreme price increases, but also extreme volatility. You remember that the gas price had become a very political topic last year in 2022, but this development started really in 2021, where prices reached levels we had not seen in 20 years and then reached extremely high levels, which then spread to the electricity market and led to electricity prices that are far beyond what industry considers as competitive, as a bearable for staying competitive, and which is triggering social measures and a lot of concern in many member states. You also see that these developments were not limited to the gas and, in consequence, the electricity system, but also crude oil and even coal prices increased significantly last year. That has to do with the global connection of the economy and the fact that, of course, coal is still a fuel that is substituting the use of gas and vice versa. So last but not least, we also have markets for trading the right to emit greenhouse gases, and the prices paid for those rights are significant and play a role. All those went up last year, and that triggered a number of reactions at our level. First of all, the market reacted itself due to the reduction of the supply of gas from Russia and the politicization of gas. Europe had to find ways to replace these quantities. And what you see here is the development of the market for liquefied natural gas, which increased 60% alone last year in Europe. meaning that we attract a number of cargoes that usually might have had other destinations, but now reach Europe, and we attract new quantities of gas that are coming now to Europe, to replacing at least partially the quantities that are no longer supplied by the pipeline system. That is, of course, a very short-term measure, which the market will and participants will continue to apply. In order to make that possible, investments were made in a hurry in infrastructure that allows importing those quantities of natural gas. Most notably, of course, in Germany, where there were no import facilities for natural gas, unlike Spain, Italy, France, the Netherlands, Belgium. Germany did not have any, and you see that there's a very rapid development, but there are also developments in other countries. So suddenly there is a gigantic reconfiguration of this system taking place. You see here the EU pipeline system, which is, of course, based to a large degree on the import of natural gas from Russia through Ukraine, and also on different routes, also through Turkey and through the Baltic Sea, which is now no longer a valid option. What does that mean for energy? And I'm trying to make the link to your work. It means, of course, we need to watch carefully the development of the balancing of the system. One important, or let's say the most important, let's say hard criterion for gas is really the level of the storages. One has to know that the gas consumption is actually met during the heating period by storages. So the import facilities are not are dimensioned deliberately such that the system is importing less than the peak demand. And during the month where we heat, we actually, so in the month where we do not heat, we import gas in Europe, we store this, and then we use this gas in the month where we do not import, where the imports are lower than the consumption, in the month of the high consumption. And you might have read in the news that we were nervous in the beginning of the year, or in the middle of the year rather, about not being able to fill the storages sufficiently, and that was reflected in the prices. You see these price developments here at the end of 2022, but then the weather was then different things happened. Of course, there was a discipline, there were savings taking place, but last not least, the weather also helped us. And during the period up to Christmas, we were able to consume much less gas than in other years, or that in some years would have been possible. Meaning we now have the obligation to very carefully watch the weather to understand where we will be with our gas storages, and that will certainly be an issue during the winter of 2023-2024, because there is still this reconfiguration of this gigantic gas system is a challenge for Europe, is a challenge for markets, but it's a challenge for consumers, and we will be watching this closely. But of course, this is not the main impact. Let's say one impact that is much further, that goes much further, is actually the political decision to do something against this dependence on this particular fossil fuel, but on fossil fuels in general. I will not go into details on all the other rightly drivers for trying to avoid the use of fossil fuels. Most of you are very well aware of all that, but the developments of last years pushed us to consider a number of measures to try to phase out the usage of gas more quickly, motivated by the market developments more than the other drivers we had for a long time. So we spent actually most of last year with the plans. And I'm going to talk just about a very few of those. But one remarkable political initiative was the Repower EU plan, which is a plan to accelerate the transition of the energy system as a reaction to the current events. We also introduced a number of short-term measures, of course, addressing the savings of gas and addressing short-term interventions in markets in order to make the some of the consequences more bearable. One thing to mention on the short-term intervention is that we were promoting an emergency measure last September that is actually aiming at the reduction of peak demand of electricity. There it is very important to coordinate that peak demand, because peak demand is something which has become much more complicated to predict currently than in the past, because the system is getting more complex. We have also introduced measures for, let's say, trying to limit what we would call windfall profit, or very high revenues that participants could make in terms of crisis, which we would try to avoid in order not to pass those excessive revenues to customers. But the longer term story is that we have decided, and not this year, but a number of years ago, to start a transition of the energy system, meaning that by 2050, the EU aims at being greenhouse gas neutral. So to roughly saying in a simplified way, only not emit greenhouse gases anymore, or even in case emissions are not unavoidable, to offset them with appropriate sinks. That means that means different things for the different sectors. You have 5 main sectors that are consuming energy, and this is the industrial sector, it's the residential sector, so your houses, it's the commercial sector, and it's the transformation of energy, which is mainly the production of electricity. And those sectors will have different decarbonization pathways. Some will be able to decarbonize, and actually to become greenhouse gas neutral, to be correct, faster than others. And the sector which we believe will be the most likely to become greenhouse gas neutral, the first one to become greenhouse gas neutral, is actually the electricity sector, so power sector, which is said there. And what does that mean? It means that there will be a gigantic deployment of sources that are not emitting greenhouse gases. We expect some nuclear there, but the lion's share will be renewable energy, and will be electricity that is mainly driven by meteorological, by meteorology. So not by and that would actually the generation of electricity from meteorologically driven sources will exceed by a factor the current production of electricity. So this is the kind of system we are going to. In addition, and that is a quick reaction, we had strong goals on the production of hydrogen as a future energy carrier in the EU. And when the war in Ukraine hit,
Andreas, sorry to jump in, but we are short on time. Could you please provide your final remarks?
My final remark is that this system, yes, indeed. So apologies. so that finally we're going into a system where we plan to ramp up the production of hydrogen, and that means even more renewable electricity. And what does all this have to do with the destination Earth? These systems will not be able to be run like we used to run energy systems. We will have a very different need for data, for information, and actually on three levels and by three main actors. And these are the investors, who will need to be much more aware of the production, of the possible production and the possible revenues of their investments because of weather-driven factors. These will be those people who are responsible for operating the infrastructure, like the networks, and finally those who make the planning on behalf of government or intragovernmental organizations in order to make the correct policy proposals for measures for keeping the pathways. And that is at the end of the day, this is also us, DG ENER, and everyone in the member states and other government organizations who are involved in planning. And the level of complexity and the requirements we have for good data and for understanding both the long-term operation but also the day-to-day operation of the system is enormous, and therefore we very much welcome your initiative, and I apologize for having spent too long. Thank you very much again.